It's what the matter. Yes, we're now seeing Bao grow into a lineage. And it's making for a great character. Rock after this week. We have just 2 entries remaining, with us getting the penultimate episode next time. Before the finale, that comes the Wednesday after. There's a lot of things going down. And in this video, we're going to be going through the Easter eggs, hidden details, and things you missed, along with our theories. Make sure you smash the thumbs up button if you enjoy the video, and please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss us like a stormtrooper that the wake has always missed, aren't they? The other way. Thanks for clicking the video. Now let's get another Mandalorian. Our last week's Son of Ara being overrun by Captain Gorian's forces. Desperate for help, Greef Karga reached out to the New Republic, which we saw was slowly being overrun by the amount of bureaucracy that they now had to handle. Though the rebels did a great job of taking down the Empire, a great job, resistance simply didn't have the means to actually run a government without the Jedi's help, and thus the First Order started to rise up in the fractures. Captain Teva ended up going to the Mandalorians for help, and we watched as they returned home to the planet Navarro. This is where we first met them in Season 1. And after beating Gorian, they were given a piece of land that they could finally call home. The armor had a quiet word with Bo Katan, and she said that she actually believed that she'd seen a myth, saw, and that she was the chosen one who could unite the Mandalorians. They're people that have been racked with civil wars for centuries, and I generally think that the civil war's gotten out of hand, haha. Anyway, Bar removed her helmet to show that this is the way. In outer space we saw as Teva discovered that the rumors of Moff Gideon's death had been greatly exaggerated. I've seen a lot of theories online saying that this is where Cara Jean was killed, and that would, given any universe, reason for why she's no longer in the show. I'm not sure how much I dig that, but I don't really think Disney are gonna go back and or hire her. So who knows if this will be revealed to be her fate at some point. Gonna be kickoffs either way. So we're moving on and getting episodes. And we start off in space and see a giant ship designed to look almost like a shellfish. This is quite fitting too, as it contains Quarren zoning, which are aquatic life forms from the planet Mooncaller. Alongside the calamari, they'd had civil wars for centuries, and whereas they formed off into their own, more peaceful species, the Quarren always tend to be the bad guys. Now we discover that this group bounty on their head because of a Mon Calamari, who's angry that Captain Shuggeth was shugging her son. We discover that the Quarrens finally have peace with their rivals. And this is very much a Romeo and Juliet story, in which 2 people from opposing sides have fallen in love. I love how the captain's at a water tank, and you can even see inside of it when she's floating around. I would discover early on that they're returning to Trias, and this is the same location that Mando met Bowie at during the Heiress episode. Imperials seemingly arrive, and the first clue that this might not be what it seems is that this is actually Moff Gideon's class. Also, I just want to give everyone huge apology who was getting into a bad batch breakdowns. I really wish I had the hours to cover absolutely everything. But unfortunately, when things get too full on, it's difficult, 5 for 6, to organize things around it. With Bad Batch, Amanda releasing at the same time, on the same day, it's really tough doing 2 jobs at once, and Bad Batch was unfortunately, like Cruiser, a casualty of this. When it came to our schedule, I will say that Ryanair did some brilliant breakdowns on it as well. So if you want to watch some good ones, then definitely head over to. We then get the return of several characters his channel from the Heiress episode, including Axawavs, and they demand the guy back. And we get a kind of kind of goofy Doctor Who opening to the entry that also goes a bit goofy. I'll be honest. Either way they take him in. And we cut the guns to higher title before we get Bo and Carl venturing out in her gauntlet to Plaisir 15. Plaisir means pleasure, which this entire place really is. And everyone's just chilling out, maxing and relaxing. And Jack Blacksing and axing, but I'm not a rapper. Traveling to a platform, we see her all group as they go in, and discover that they've been lying low on an independent planet. To me, this planet very much represents Ovation of what Mandalore could look like. And it's basically one of those society, if heavy spoilers didn't exist memes, is a giant dome in the middle, much like the Sundari. And also monorail, as well as some ebony droids. This denotes that they're imperial. That the planet is very much using the older aspects of their arsenal to build something better. This is why they have star destroyers and droids like this, greeting people to arrive. The protocol droidometers are a 7, and these gain their nickname Insect Droids due to their facial features, used heavily on the Death Star. They've often appeared throughout the saga. And this is normally to denote Imperial superiority. You also see later on that the guards with Jack Black are wearing stormtrooper uniforms, hammering on this idea that it's good to recycle. Who inside the monorail car? They have to show their chain codes. And these are basically just there's a form of chorus. And accords pass through the galaxy. And this means that people have to identify themselves. It's very much like what the Imperials when they force people to show their papers. You know what that's a reference to. And it also shows the useless bureaucracy that the Republic have enforced in the galaxy. I'm more worried about stuff like this than pirates in the First Order. And this is why their vision ended of the galaxy failing. Now why Bao is such an important character is because she's very much walked the two sides. Bao comes from the royal family of Mandalore. She's been a part of the Death Watch. Switch sides when Darth Maul took over, and also her own smaller sect. She's now also been part of the children of the Watch. Has seen firsthand his sense of pacifism. And she's also held the Darksaber as well leadership because she's seen she understands how every life works. I don't get crazy political mate, but I will say that I tend to trust leaders actually live the life of and the not people the super rich megalords who don't know how to fill up a car at a petrol station. Really works well as the leader. But unfortunately, she's dealing with Mandalorians. Unfortunately, it's in their nature and this is to fight one another. Of their warrior lifestyle. The reason people stopped following her in the first place was because she didn't get the Darksaber in combat. And there she was, seen as a false leader by many. Mandalorians demand a strong leader up at the front of them. And this ties all the way back to Mandalore the Great, who pretty much set the path that they now follow. This idea of a Mandalorian leader ways of life is also something that we've seen. At one point, the Mandalorians and Jedi were enemies, but Toro's up as a Jedi Mandalorian, and he united the two sides. He was the one who created the Darksaber that brought everyone together. And this was due to both him the knowing Jedi and also the Mandalorians. Thus Bao could do the same thing, and her being selected as leader is very important. As long as Mando plays along which I think you will. We are going to see a very strong leader in her possibly. You will see how that goes. But unfortunately, I also think they haven't stopped the divisions. That could end up rising once more in the future. See you, chump. Now they arrived to find a big banquet, led by Jack Black and Lizzo. Kind of jump the shock a bit here, baiting it and yeah, I'll guess. We'll see what the internet reaction to this is. Now at the table, we can catch lots of different species, including an Ithorian, some Silists, and the same species as the frog lady who again, Heiress episode. Jack Black wants to address the panther in the room. And that is, why the fuck is Jack Black and Lizzo in Star Wars? Sorry, losing myself a bit there. Anyway, the banter in the room is of course a play on the phrase
and
elephant
banters
in
themselves
the room are based on mammoths, which were the precursors to elephants. It turns out that he was an imperial,
but we see that the
amnesty program has accepted him back. You might notice that he has
lapel
an
on his
amnesty
top.
And huge shoutouts to Rio
For pointing
Neri
out
that this is actually an A in Arabesh.
Now, we didn't mention this last
but
week.
Ryanary. Bloody Ryanary. Pointing out that Carson and Zeb could be members of Blue Squadron. This group defeated at several points in the saga, including the Battle of Endor and many of the dogfights we've seen. Now, just to clear up another thing from last week, we pointed out the rank
of his uniform,
which we've now had cleared up. Paulson Hungley plays the character,
and it was real that he
helped
actually
design his character's costume.
Originally, his bomber jacket
had several different custom patches on it, and these were all designed by the actor. The Rancor was originally supposed to be a bulldog, but in order to make it more in line with Star Wars,
they changed it to the beast.
They also originally thought of doing a Rancor claw instead, but they settled on the head in the end. Anyway, back to Jack Black. And he's helped to rebuild the planet, showing what the amnesty program has done again.
This entire planet
is repurposing things from the Imperials. And every aspect ever carries over something from what's come
As
before.
an
ex-Imperial, though, he's not allowed
unless
to create his own army to protect over the planet. Now you might notice that when Lizzo is sitting
there's
down,
this
big hologram flower thing. And we see this trolling behind her.
Later
as
on,
she
you
walks
learn
along,
that Jack Black
because
got
she
in
was
with
one
her.
of the royal family, and they fell in love and started holding democratic elections. This led to them still being in charge. But they're very pompous and, yeah, what the F? What the FCAC they do? In Star Wars, Elizo's character is called the Duchess, and Bo's sister, Satin, was one of these as well. They are very much pacifists too, and they don't allow blasters to be brought into the city. Jack Black's character is called Bombardier, and this typically refers to either a member of a bombing crew or a non-commissioned officer put in charge of artillery. Now it turns out that they have a bit of a problem, and some of the droids have ended up malfunctioning. They've tried to reform a battle droid, but now they've risen up. And Balmander had
now
been picked
from
to
here,
take them down.
we could to Christopher Lloyd,
who's in our third big cameo of the entry. Boys, and I seen this guy back. And he talks about how the droids
Scrapped
were
on
saved
Carthan.
from being. This is actually a prison moon, and it contained the Carthan chop fuels, which is where droids were destroyed and also dismantled. You could call it the Carthan warehouse. But the reason the droids are rebelling is revealed to us later on. They're very much used as slaves. And no, they don't say this specifically. There are a lot of nods to Blade Runner, which I'll be talking about later on. In that, the replicants were sick of being used, having these short lifespans. And this is very much the case with the droids as well. They get their minds wiped over and over and over, and don't really get free will, as they're constantly swapping
You
sides.
see the
havoc they've unleashed. And you can also catch an M68 land speeder that's being crashed. This is the same model as the one Han had at the start of Solo. And we learn that it's a widespread problem. Or
droid.
COO droid also goes berserk as well, and it spins its knives around. Similar what one did
Might
in
be
the book of
reaching
Boba
here,
Fett, but it looks like one of the customers is wearing the carpet from The
And
Shining.
with this
being a bar scene, it might be a reference of that, might not be. But I see the shining carpet
And I
everywhere
just can't
these
avoid
days.
it
Now
mentally,
they can't shut them
because
off people are so reliant on
now
droids.
that
They've become useless. It's very much us seeing the future of humanity before we're all wiped out by rogue
Yay,
AI.
chatbot.
Come make my job
Now
completely
they then
directed
useless.
Arg Nords, and this is
They
the same
also
species
appeared
as
as
one of the
Queel
pirates and Gordian ship. And this one was dressed
From
like
Peter
Smee.
Pan.
Masters when it comes to droids. They first showed up in the Sagra on Cloud City and were the reason that C-3PO got dismantled in the room. He can catch super
And building
battle
off the
droids
back
as
of
well.
very much the
We're
idea
actually
that the Separatists,
the good guys, in a way now. The Oaknouts
all
ignore
forms of royalty
and it's
and
not
titles.
until
Steps
Mando
forward and says that he
that
knows
they look
Queel,
up, using their
I have
catchphrase,
spoken,
and gets her attention. And I'm sure they
and just
reused some of the
banged
quill
sideburns
masks
on them.
I know it was
Now
you.
they deny
that they're the reason. The droids are malfunctioning.
And because
Mando
treats him with the respect
they
he
give
had
him a
for
way to
Queel.
track the
At the
rogues.
loading dock,
We see more super battle droids.
and there's definitely
throughout
this feeling of
scene.
unease.
And the main reason Mano didn't
was
trust
because
droids in the first
when
place.
he was younger,
They, of course, attacked his home. This feeling was felt
many people
by,
throughout the galaxy,
as droids were, of course, used for oppression. During the Clone Wars,
this is why droids
were banned
from the Mos
Eisley Cantina, and it took people a long time
to get over the
that
fact
they were used
to disrupt
people's
most.
way of life.
They go to the head battle,
Droid Foreman, and Mando starts to try and tick them
to
off.
see if they
Eventually,
react.
he fishes one out, and again, we get a sort of riff on Blade Runner, with Mando chasing
Blade
his
Runner
target
on my
through
mind
a
a
crowded
lot.
street. As we've just finished
a big breakdown
which will
of
be
it
dropping on the channel
on Saturday.
If you're not a member,
If you are a member,
then it's out now. And if you want to
just
support
click
the
the
channel
button
below, just cost 99
You'll
cents.
get
to see that video early, which it is.
it's worth it.
I promise. Thanks. Now eventually,
They take the droid
with
down.
a crime scene being created by some constable
Instead of
droids.
yellow tape,
We get a hologram shooting up. I love when Star Wars transforms
things from real
Again,
life,
it's similar
Zora's
to death in Blade
and
Runner,
burns of discovering
a spark pad on it,
leading them to
a dried bar called the resistor.
It's a nice
Little Pony play on words. Now a resistor
is a device
that restricts
the flow of a current,
and to resist,
of
course, means to rise up.
in the streets.
You might also notice that there's a lot of droids, and it shows how integrated
Into the society
that they are. Inside the bar, we see Enric, 920. And this is what carried
Anakin and Padme about.
on Tatooine. We also catch a wide droid, and this is the CZ
One model which
first appeared.
in A New Hope
You then can see
in
Arcs 24 as Bao and Mando
these
walk
were
in. First introduced in Galaxy's
I love
Edge.
the record
Skip moment,
and it kinda
reminded me a lot
the
of
opening of American
or any
Werewolf in
time
London.
that I've walked into a
Spoiler review bar.
Mando and Bao
do the whole
good cop bad cop routine.
using fear
Try
to
and get answers. The droids possess fear too.
when they worry that
if the uprisings
they're going to be
continue, due to
wiped.
how
unwieldy they
droids
are
make a good workforce,
because they obey. But the second
that they stop doing that,
it's
then
gonna be
curtains for them. You get more shots
and
of the
can
bar
also
catch a droid holding a sabbatic
which is
card,
basically
the Star Wars equivalent of poker. There's also
an Ev droid
as well, which was used as Jabba's torture droid. The pain's amount is being sympathetic, and even though a lot of them were separatist Imperials, they just want to be alive and have a purpose.
really makes
You start to see them in a new life,
and it made me
sort of think, are we the bad guys? And the bartender mentions
Nepenthe being
served in the bar.
though it's been used on
Machines, yeah,
the wood itself
actually pulls from an ancient
that was
potion
used to relieve pain,
sorrow, grief, and also suffering.
this is what
reprogrammed the droids, and
yeah it wasn't
the Ugnodu fucked
I won't
up
have anyone
being
being racist
about those little Ugnauts.
you in here
I have spoken.
this episode
Is very much a sort
detective
of
noir
story in which
we get the pair
investigating
what's going on
and we see the classic body slap scene.
this is some
It also popped up
Blade
in
Runner
2049,
and it's a staple
in stories like
where
this,
they're
almost becoming a cliche.
are repurposed
Torchitrod is then brought
to drain
in
fluid
from the recent
and
resistor,
this causes
it to end up attacking them. We see Mando
is getting
a bit more to grips with the Darksaber,
and though
gets
Bo
it back at the end of the episode.
I don't think
that's the last time that Mando
will hold it.
I can actually
imagine him
getting it back in further
and
episodes.
like I said
before that, there is sort of
this civil war
ingrained into the Mandalorian. Now we get another
Blade Runner
2049 nod. When they start to scan the substance. In the film, they locked out Rachel's bones and zoomed in to find a serial number denoting that she was a replicant. Yeah, though, they discover a chain code. And this allows them to start a track its origin. They also do the cliché thing with the scientists, where they brush it to the side, and it's the character that spots what's actually going on. There's also mention of the Techno Union. And this is a group that first appeared in Attack of the Clones. Now turns out there's been some underhanded dealings from Commissioner Hellgate. How we discovered that he brought them in illegally. Hellgate might be a play on Hell's Gate, and how he could open
bring
up
it all
everything.
down.
They go back to the future Mystic control room, which is where the truth is finally revealed. He holds his hand over a big red button, and this can turn them back to
which
being
will
battle
wipe out the
droids.
population.
Now this is clearly similar to Order 66,
And no clones
were thought to be better than droids. We saw firsthand how much they could be programmed to. In the end, this and the cost were why the Imperials moved
And we
away
discovered
from
that
using them.
Hellgate was in fact
A separatist. Getting political, mate. You know we hate that. On the channel. And they take him down by using a stun blast on him. We look up back to the garden bowls, and we see Grogu using the Force to help out the Duchess
And he
of
says
Mandown
this
burrow with Hellgate. If that isn't a quack to calling this stiff thing
This is
slimy,
not
only a play on the phrase, the pot calling the kettle black, but it's also an in-universe reference
all
to
of
this.
that.
Isn't the character calling the stifling slimy?
If that's not the quack.
To call in the stifling slimy. A Hellgate has clearly lived on the planet for a while, and he sees the life that they've given to the population
Has been
something that's forced it to decline.
Algie
Algie apologized to the Duchess and asks
And
for
man's
her
going to
grace.
be out no time.
With these soft, bloody woke, PC liberals that just love letting people get away
He's
with
exiled
stuff. To the mood of Paraquat for the time
But my
being.
guess
is that he's going to be back at some point. Bao is then given the
And
key
this
to
is
the
handed
city,
over by
or
a
bunny
knee droid.
if you're me. Grogu is united too. And though this doesn't make him a Jedi Knight, it's pretty close. It is possible one day that Grogu might become the leader of Mandalore itself. He, of course, has a very long lifespan, and being part of the Jedi as well will allow him to become almost like Todd Visla. Yoda was on the Jedi Council for centuries, and this allowed him to have a wisdom that very few others possessed. If we think about what Mandalore's gonna look like in 100 years from now, then all of these characters will be dead, or as Grog, who will still be classed as being very young. Therefore, they might even end up appointing him as a leader sometime down the line. And I think that would be such a cool direction to take his character in anyway. They head out to the old crew, and Bao shows that she's very much got imposter syndrome and wrestles with what to do. When they arrive, everyone's just kinda hanging out, drinking tea and playing catch, but they get a frosty reception.
But
when
I'm
it
not
comes
a
to
rapper.
Axe. Bao challenges him, and the pair duke it out. And I kinda wish
Of
that
the
this was the
episode.
main focus. Droids worrying about being replaced by humans
Is a nice play
how
on.
humans worry about being replaced by
But they
AI.
didn't
explore to the extent. Nothing it was justified spending that much time with it. I wish we had more of focus on the Mandalorian and fighting like this, and show the politics. Even though I hate politics, Bo wins, but Axe says that
as
no
long
one
as
will
she
follow
doesn't
her.
hold
She
the
gives her "We are
Darksaber."
stronger together" speech,
And definitely
by
shows that
openly
she wants to
accepting
unite
Mando.
everyone.
He goes to give her the Darksaber again, and she very much references Sabine,
Who too gifted
it
her
has
in
to
Rebels.
be won in combat though, or taken another way, beyond just being handed over from one to another. However, in a technicality, he talks about episode 2 and brings up how he was held hostage. She took it during that episode and saved Mando, and thus she defeated the enemy that defeated
Meaning
him.
that she now has
She's
it.
once more moving further up the chain, and at this point, she has all the pieces in place to become the leader of Mandalore now. Interestingly, I did think that we'd learn from these exactly what
His ship
happened
was
with Moff
ambushed
Gideon
by
last
Mandalorians.
week. And when we start off with them, they seem that they'd be revealed to be the ones behind the attack on the shuttle. He still hasn't popped up, but I do feel like him and the
Largely
Amnesty Act
over the
have
season,
bloomed, even if they've always
just kind of been in the background.
The Amnesty Act meant that many soldiers could swap sides, and this was similar to Operation Paperclip after the Second World War.
This allowed some
the Nazi scientists
And
to
it's
come
a
to
similar
America to
setup.
what we had in the case of Dr.
Like the
Pershing.
Nuremberg
Though
trials
those
were sent
complicit
before
in order
judges
to
and
decide
juries.
what was going to
Moff
happen
Gideon
to them.
is up there.
Some of the worst Imperial officers
in the galaxy.
And though we don't know his entire backstory, there are minor things we've been told. Gideon actually made a name for himself, and this is an
on the Bad
organization that
Batch.
we've seen in
Through
and
this,
he was heavily complicit in the Great
And this
Purge,
saw
Mandalorians being murdered in their millions. Once the planet had been ransacked, he then got his hands on the Darksaber, and he attained the rank of Moff.
in 9AB, he was almost
Also put on
But he
trial
faked
for
his own
war
death.
crimes
In order
then.
to escape
He's very much
persecution.
had his hand in several
And he's a
things.
key component
in how the First Order rose up.
Gideon, of course,
quote unquote, looked after Navarro and their independence.
has some mean
that the First Order weaponized
throughout the galaxy
They actually used examples
of how incompetent
to get
that the
independent
Republic was
planet to secretly invest
in
in
the
them,
promise
that they could return law and order
to the galaxy.
Whether this is spelled out in the show does remain to be seen. But I think it's an important
When we're
thing to bear
discussing
in
the
mind.
series,
My thoughts on this episode,
I'm sure you can tell,
I didn't really enjoy all that much. I think the cameos
just kind of
took me out of it. I know, I'm sure Lizzo is a great
and
person.
her fans
definitely love this. When it comes to Star Wars, I'm not sure if it feels like it's fitting for this universe. It's the same with Jack Black. And though you know,
I love the guy.
I like Lizzo's music as well.
Sometimes
I'll have it on the radio.
in the
background though. Don't dislike the
I think
video. Having them pop up and be these
kind of
goofy
characters
almost took away from the tone that this season's been
This
aiming
has
for.
been
very serious
and sincere.
and to just have this goofy episode, though it's fun, you know, I'm not sure if it aligned with my
Sensibilities.
It is pretty much
Coming
just
down to that.
I know I'm looking on Twitter right
And
now.
there's lots of
who had a
people,
lot of
but
fun
for
with
me,
it.
yeah.
I wish the focus was more on the
Stuff
serious.
that we got
the end
towards.
online.
I'm
seeing that lots of people are saying that it's
Like a
basically
Clone
Wars episode. But even if it was
I'd
ranked
probably
amongst
put it
those,
amongst the bottom.
the Clone Wars has some great episodes
That
take things seriously,
And this would be,
to me at least, one of the more goofy fellow ones. We've got 8 episodes this season.
to me, you've just wasted
one, so yeah. Let's see how they do
over the next 2.
Please be good.
I
I
was
was saying that there was some great character development here, and it's nice just watching Bo and Mando work together. You can really see how they're the kind of yin to each other's yang. And whereas Mando is filling in
bits
with the egg out, Bao had to come in and kind of settle him down. In other areas, they both
And
work
if
together
people
really well.
start to ship them
After this episode,
I can
definitely see why. So yeah,
Do
I think it was a great
No,
episode.
I think it was.
Probably the worst one in the season so far.
But saying that,
we've had a really solid season, and yeah, let's see what they
2
do
weeks
over the
and
next. How this leaves the series.
I think so far,
Season 2 is still sitting pretty high up
out
as
of
my
the
fair
Star
Wars shows.
Let me
but
know below
exactly what you think.